So I've been working on an alternate version of the Horus heresy which asks the simple question, what if the Chaos Gods weren't directly involved with the heresy? Well, let's delve into the second part of this series, shall we? So in my previous episode we talked about the setting, what had changed among the Primarchs meeting their mother ERDAN, and the events leading up to the heresy. And where we left off, the Emperor had just banished Dorn, Magnus, Perturabo, Conrad from his sight, and Guilliman, Fulgrim and Angron had showed up with their fleets. So let's delve right back into it. The situation was incredibly intense. Two gargantuan fleets stared each other down in the orbit of terror itself. Weapons fully primed and ready. All it took was a single spark to ignite this whole powder keg, or one voice of reason to calm the situation down. That voice of reason was Dorn, who ordered his fleet to stand down. He hoped in doing this that all the others would follow suit. It felt like an eternity of waiting for Dorn, but in reality it was only a couple of minutes, until the Primarch Roberte Guilliman ordered his fleet to do the same. The situation was tense, but it was starting to calm down, and the two sides began to speak to each other over Vox. They agreed to meet on Luna to discuss the situation. Now, saying that the atmosphere was tense during this meeting would be a massive understatement. How can you be so damn foolish to reject everything we have told you, simply because he's our father? I do not reject what you say because he is our father. I reject it because we barely know this woman who claims to be our mother, and you have provided us with no evidence to support these wild accusations. Brother, we have given you all the information that we have. Can you seriously sit there and tell me there is not a single shred of doubt in your heart? He is our father. He is our emperor. That is all that matters. What matters is the truth more than anything else. Something which our father seems determined to keep from us. If our father is keeping things from us, brother, he must have a good reason. You are so consumed with blind obedience to our father, it makes you weak, brother. And you are so blind that you cannot see past your own ambition, brother. What is this, really? Is this you lashing out because you were not made War Master in Horus's stead? This is not about that. This is about justice. You have never once cared about justice in your entire life. Throughout this long and very heated exchange, Fulgrim remained extremely quiet, whereas Conrad Kurz continually muttered strange things to himself, something which heavily angered Angron. After many hours of back and forth debate, a compromise was finally reached. All the Primarchs would be recalled back to Terra, alongside ERDAN. There, they would hear everything she had to say, and they would make their own minds up on whether to believe her or not. Although this solution pleased no one, both sides had to agree that they were getting nowhere. But unfortunately, things took a turn for the worst. Conrad started having uncontrollable visions. He started going mad. When Angron went to confront him, Conrad suddenly had a very vivid vision of an ultramarine ambush. And before anyone knew what was going on, Conrad sprung his own trap. With but a snap of his fingers, dozens of Night Lord Astartes appeared out of the shadows and began attacking Fulgrim, Angron and Guilliman. And before anyone could figure out what was going on, Guilliman sent his own signal, and drop pods full of ultramarines descended from the sky, and a great and chaotic battle ensued on the surface of Luna. It was complete chaos. Fulgrim duelled Perturabo, Angron attacked Conrad but was beaten back by Magnus, and Dorn and Guilliman also engaged in combat. Was this your plan all along, Dorn? Lure us here so you could kill us all? Traitor! This was not my doing, brother, but pray tell, where did these ultramarines appear from? The same place these damned Night Lords did, apparently. As the battle raged on the surface, a space battle ensued in orbit, and the weapon emplacements on Luna and Terra also aided the Loyalists in this battle. The traitors' forces were massively outnumbered and outgunned, and they were forced to retreat, with their Primarchs quickly returning to their ships. Upon reaching their fleets, Dorn and Perturabo made a quick escape. Magnus followed suit with his own fleet, planning on returning to his home of Prospero. Conrad, alongside some of his best warriors, disappeared and his fleet scattered in all directions. It was now painfully obvious that the time for words was over and the time for war had come. Dorn and Perturabo retreated with their legions to Istvaan V, where they licked their wounds and prepared for the Emperor's retaliation. Dorn still held out a vain hope that a peaceful solution could be reached, but Perturabo soon put him straight, claiming that their could be no peace anymore. Magnus returned back to Prospero with a similar hope for peace. He hoped that if maybe he could get a private audience with his father, he could sort this entire mess out before it got any further out of hand. But he knew his ship would be destroyed before he even got close to Terra, so he had to use an alternate method of transport, the warp. But while travelling through the warp, Magnus would encounter a strange psychic barrier, one which, try as he might, he could not break through. That is, until he felt a strange psychic sensation overtake his body. He was filled with immense power. Although he couldn't explain this was enough to break through the psychic barrier. Magnus believed this had to be his full psychic might at full power showing itself, but oh, how wrong he was. He entered the Imperial Palace to find an enraged Emperor, one who was not interested in talking, only having his custodies seize Magnus. In utter desperation, Magnus fled back into the warp. Little did Magnus know, but he had created a doorway, and now unwelcome guests were pouring through it. Just before the Emperor and his custodies set off to meet this threat, he ordered his sons to bring these traitors to justice by any means necessary. So Guilliman, Fulgrim and Angron set out with their fleets for the world of Istvaan V. On the way there, Guilliman sent a message to Ferrus Manus, whose fleet was the closest, ordering him to join them, although he would be delayed in doing this. Eventually the fleet would make their way to the world of Istvaan V. There they would engage in a ferocious battle with the traitors' forces. Despite Dawn and Perturabo being heavily outnumbered, they had had ample time to prepare defences, and they made the loyalists pay dearly for every inch of ground they took. Yet despite this, slowly but surely the loyalists were whittling down the traitors' defences, and just as it looked like the traitors were about to retreat, the loyalists got another bit of good news. The Iron Hands had made it and were making planetfall as they spoke. Guilliman called a halt to the advance, ordering that they should link up with their reinforcements for the final charge. But as the loyalists got closer to the Iron Hands, suddenly all communication stopped, and before anyone could figure out why, a huge barrage of bolter and artillery fire rained down upon them from the Iron Hands. They had turned traitor. Just as the situation grew ever dire, contingents of the Night Lords began attacking the loyalists from their flanks. Finding themselves completely encircled and hopelessly outnumbered, Guilliman ordered Fulgrim to try and defend their rear, but Fulgrim simply stared in silence. "What are you doing, brother? Did you not hear my order?" "Oh, I heard your order, brother, loud and clear." "Then, by the Emperor, what are you waiting for? Carry it out!" "Yes, that's it, isn't it? Always barking orders at me, thinking that you're so much better than me." "We do not have time for your petulant rants, Fulgrim. We need to consolidate our position and wait for the fleet to rescue us." "Yes, that's it, brother. Always shunning me, always thinking I'm stupid. Well, how's this for you? Maybe, just maybe, I don't want to be saved." Before Guilliman could respond, Fulgrim rammed his sword straight into Guilliman's side and gave the order for his Emperor's children to attack the other loyalists. Fulgrim had also turned traitor. He might have been able to finish Guilliman, but Angron beat him back. Now the situation was completely hopeless. Two loyalist legions, the Ultramarines and the World Eaters, completely surrounded by 5 traitor legions. But just when all hope seemed lost, they received one bit of good news. Their fleets in orbit had successfully punched a hole in the traitors' defences. It wasn't a big hole and they couldn't sustain it for very long, but it was just enough to be able to evacuate their forces from the planet's surface. But someone needed to stay behind to hold the traitors off. Guilliman, incredibly injured, spoke to Angron. "I will stay, brother. I will hold them off." "No, brother. You are too important. You will be needed in the fights to come." "But I am injured, damn it." "But your wounds can be healed. Mine cannot. The butcher's nails over the years have been degenerating me into a monster. But I refuse to become that. I will die as a warrior. I will die an honourable death. Let me and my warriors have this last glorious charge, brother." Guilliman nodded before being helped aboard a Thunderhawk. Just as he climbed aboard, he turned to his brother. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. You will be avenged. I promise you." The Thunderhawk took off, leaving Angron and a couple hundred of his best warriors to meet their fate. "Do you remember all those years ago, brothers? We cheated death because of our Emperor. Ever since that day, we have been on borrowed time. Now the day of judgment has come at last. All that I ask is that if this is to be our end, we make it memorable. Carve your names into the very hearts of our enemies for the Emperor. Angron and his forces charged into the very heart of the enemy. No mercy was shown, no quarter given. Each one of his berserkers took 3 enemy Astartes with them, but one by one they were defeated until only Angron himself remained. Angron was riddled with bolt of fire and fell to his knees, with his former brothers surrounding him. Dawn was admittedly very confused by the whole situation. He had no idea that Ferrus Manus and Fulgrim were planning on betraying the Emperor and turning to their side. I mean, why would they do such a thing? What reason did they have? In truth, it was Perturabo who had orchestrated this entire event perfectly. During his duel with Fulgrim on Luna, the Primarch had successfully turned his brother traitor. The truth was, Fulgrim already had serious doubts about the Emperor, and all Perturabo had to do was play on these doubts and feed Fulgrim's ego. Ferrus Manus, on the other hand, was far easier. You see, he had become convinced that humanity was weak because their flesh was weak. He had begun to experiment with forbidden Necron technology, fusing the consciousness of his Astartes into robotic bodies. He was creating a new form of the Men of Iron. When the Emperor discovered this, he was horrified, ordering his son to stop his experiments and destroy his Men of Iron, something which Ferrus did not do. He also started to harbour a deep resentment for his father over this, and all Perturabo had to do was to promise that he would let Ferrus Manus continue his experiments completely unhindered. But regardless of this, the traitorous Primarchs surrounded their broken brother. Perturabo was about to walk off when suddenly Dawn spoke. Stop! Stop this at once! We can use him. We can use him as a hostage to negotiate peace, to stop this from getting any further out of hand. Damn it, brother. Look around you. There can be no peace. There can only be war. Total war. Then give Angron a chance to join us, brother. Perturabo turned to Angron. What do you say, brother? Are you willing to join us? Angron looked up at his brother, his mouth full of blood. He simply smiled, spat the blood out at his brother's feet and said, "For the Emperor. Goodbye, brother." Perturabo then walked off and Ferrus Manus stood in front of his brother, holding a bolt pistol to Angron's head, and with a single shot it was over. But the war had just begun, and the galaxy would burn.